Okay. Eli, what's up, man?
How are you? Good to see you, John.
Thank you. Those two songs were great.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Thank you for performing them.
No
So we were going to meet up for a cup of coffee,
Right.
and I was like, "No, come on my podcast, man."
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
First time. Yeah.
Come. Do you have nothing to fear?
Oh, okay.
You get this idiot, whether it's in a coffee shop or on a couch.
I was just gonna say the same thing to you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Tell me about those two songs. They were vastly different.
They were vastly different. So in sort of kind of the run up to the second song, we'll talk about the second song first, which is "Smile 'Cause Somebody Loves You."
Yeah.
That was my my flagship song. It sounds ridiculous, but it was the song that kind of got some momentum for me, got a little bit of press, got a little bit of label attention, and then the song immediately at that the other song, rather the first song, was a song I put together after a long illness with COVID.
Okay.
So, which is not to say kind of the illness was informing everything that I was doing, but it just kind of led to different music and led to different approach, I think, lyrically, and just what I kind of wanted to say and sort of what I wanted to share in the music.
So the second song was more of like an up-tempo, happier.
Right.
I like that you performed that second. Because maybe that's where you're like kind of heading. Maybe
it's a strange thing to me. The two worlds are not entirely bifurcated, but they definitely run at different temperatures for me. So I'm gravitating, I think, as most singer-songwriters do, toward the newer stuff first.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Whereas people sometimes just sort of want to hew to their thing that they're comfortable with, and they, I luckily was kind of shaken out of that stupor and had the chance to almost, sort of come at this new again.
So I don't want to ignore the COVID thing.
Sure.
I definitely want to tackle the COVID thing, and it's very deep and everything. But let me just talk to you as an artist first,
sure.
And then we can get very deeply depressing. You can tell me, tell me about
your
journey.
Do you see the smile on my face?
But I mean, you're here, so obviously it ended well.
Happy ending,
hopefully,
right.
yeah.
Totally.
But like, I mean, you're a creative director, right? And
I am.
That's your
my day gig. Yeah.
So kind of. Tell me about your brand as a musician.
Sure.
Like kind of pretend that you're the product a little bit.
Sure, easy to do. So just a little bit of background. I had always kind of been interested in singing, songwriting, Beatles. I mean, this is, Michael Jackson. These were like tapes that my mom just played over and over in the car. Sure. And got to the position where I was good enough on playing guitar and putting my kind of thing together that I actually ended up at music school.
It's a dope guitar, by the way.
Thanks, man. Dope, bro. Yeah. So I did sort of take a slightly more academic approach or course, I think, at the beginning of all this, and put a lot of sounds together, listened to a ton of jazz, played classical repertory, continued to write songs in a band that I was in college, two college bands. And I think somewhere kind of in the mix of all those things, it's a little, I'm being a little cheeky when I kind of say my sound is somewhere between Coltrane and Cobain. But I use that because those are good they were great reference points for me. I was like a Nirvana maniac.
Sure.
And later in the career sort of added I hate to say harmonic sophistication. That sounds so stupid on a podcast, but I added
favorite Nirvana song?
Oh man. So I do a really mean cover, Smells Like Teen Spirit. But probably my favorite Nirvana song is going to be something weird like I like the hits.
Sure.
It's got to be I can't On a Plane. Probably On a Plane.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah. Just
Lounge Act for me.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Yeah.
So it's deep cut. I mean,
right.
I mean, I'm ignoring Bleach, which is bad because I love that entire album. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No. It's
the
okay.
Nirvana podcast.
You're getting my catalog brain off into the weird direction. Totally fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, so on top of that mix of like great 90s rock, I started throwing a bunch of like harmonically weird stuff, the Giant Steps record and just all sorts of things that I would just sort of get very, very far into. Weirdly also like a lot of like Pat Metheny and just, and those are in there, maybe not like overtly in there, but all that stuff sort of made its way. So I think there's kind of as a brand, again, it's the Cobain meets Coltrane, but I do I do like immediacy in music. I don't, you know, to a large extent, I've been to a ton of jazz gigs, and I have some jazz musician friends that are phenomenal players. But I sort of knew, you know, kind of my Obi-Wan Kenobi escape was not my plan for that particular, you know, thing. I was never gonna kind of like hew to that jazz course. But I took a lot of those sounds, and I kind of took a lot of the ideas back to the shop. And I do think that what I really love about music, especially making music, is the immediacy and getting something that sort of is almost kinetic, you know, in the connection that it makes with people. Which is not to say that can't happen in jazz. I've seen some amazing jazz performances, but sure. I think it's jazz a little more recondite. Has to know the material, have to know the vocabulary. There's something about singer-songwriter rock guitar feelings and vibes that you just don't have to explain to an audience. So I hate to, you know, it's me trying to hide the vegetables a little and bring that to a performance. So in effect, those two songs that we heard are kind of like, you know, high points for me in my writing, where I get to have a little bit of sort of harmonic fun, but the song is really sort of carried into that rock realm.
So in terms of songwriting, like at what age was it? Around college where you're like, I can actually write songs? It's one thing to know that you can actually sing.
Yeah.
But like, could you always write? I mean, you're a creative guy, so I'm assuming...
I am a creative guy. So parallel to the music stuff, I was, you know, I was a writing major in college as well.
Okay.
This is how I kind of wound my way into the world of creative industries. But I realized that a lot of the things that I like, a lot of like Beatles tunes and Nirvana tunes,
sure,
were as much for me about kind of the coolness of the words. I don't know a better way to say that. Yeah. There's, you know, to come back to the immediacy thing. Not everybody plays guitar. Not everybody can sing. Not everybody knows chord changes. But everybody can relate to a really cool lyric. You know, and I think that continues to be something that I try to channel, and I really appreciate when I hear sort of like the craftsmanship of good lyricism. And you know, they can be words that don't always jibe. Like the guy from Phoenix, I mean, his name Thomas. Yeah. So he's got a wonderful use of the English language because it's not native. It's not quite native. It's really informed by something else. And so I like that. And probably most people maybe, you know, I don't know how deep they like to go lyrically, but I love to get into things that are just like not quite right. There's a band called Halloween Alaska that has been a big influence on me in that capacity. So that guy is also a creative director. And his, I can't remember his name. Dave King is the drummer in that band. I'm blanking on the James Deers.
Okay.
They're out of Minnesota. They're just phenomenal. They have a really cool ensemble sound, but it's his lyric idea that like his concept is way out there. You know, sort of like a Neo Dylan kind of thing.
Nice.
It's kooky.
What comes first for you, lyrics or music? Or it varies.
I think in the course of knowing I will have a good song usually starts with I can almost sort of visualize what a chorus would sound like, right? Like that first song is called Recognized. It's just a really easy like you get it, you know, like it's sort of lingua franca right now to have, you know, to sort of stand for something and sort of be seen and all that. So that was fertile ground for me, that kind of thinking. But you know, a phrase like "smile because somebody loves you" is just very easy. It's very easy to get into. So normally I'll have a phrase that I'm kind of turning around in my head, and it will invariably take a shape of some sort. I'm usually not precious about that kind of stuff. I will retool it and hammer it out and make it, you know, kind of fit the thing that I'm working on. On the flip side of that coin, I'm always noodling on guitar. I always come up with ideas. I always have some sort of like melody or chord progression like sitting in my lap. So a lot of this is like just getting lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of people will kind of play up their songwriting skills, and certainly there is like an art to it and a talent and a dedication. But sometimes you just get lucky.
Right.
Sometimes you just find a cool, you know, series of words that comes into the guitar part that you've been working on for like 2 months.
Are you jotting this down, like voice memos and
I
stuff
do
like
voice
that?
memos a lot. I still have just a ton of notebooks from, you know, back in the pre cell phone times, which is funny because when I look through them now, it's it's totally like alien to me.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
really
Like, what the hell is
yeah,
this?
yeah. I mean, not only the bad poetry of a 23-year-old, but also just like how did I make a song out of this? It's like nonsense, just scribbles. So
What was life like? Where'd you grow up again?
so I'm from Wheeling, West Virginia originally. Yeah,
what was that town like?
we're
Small
in the-
town, big town, city?
It's about 30,000 people.
Okay.
A lot of kids. I tell people this sort of lovingly and maybe a little not. It was a lot like growing up in a David Lynch movie.
Okay.
You know, there's certainly kind of like the weird seamy underbelly and the it is a good town. It's a good town. I sound very Midwestern to talk about it this way, but there's like they're in the gravitational pull of Pittsburgh. At one point, it was a booming city. It was a steel town. That all went away by the time I was a kid, of course. But it still had a lot of the like sort of like old school, old town money people that were interested in the arts. I mean, for a 30,000 person town, it had a symphony orchestra, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So just legacy endowments and things of that nature. And that actually, I think, in a lot of ways was kind of like my entree into getting into that, into like arts and performing and having sort of like taste and culture as a you know, because I do hear stories from other folks, like not only in my home state, West Virginia, but like in Pennsylvania and Ohio. It's tough. It's tough to find your thing. But I think, you know, I also had the benefit of two parents that were very serious about music educations for their kids. You know, as tried and true as that has become for, I think, a lot of the way you want to raise your kids, right? Like just give them something that they can kind of carry them with them through life. Knowing, of course, or never knowing that either parent that I would like actually be sitting here with a guitar playing songs and and that's okay. But it kind of, that little area, I met some great people. One of those guys is a bass player up here. There, you know, some really, one is also a really talented writer and English professor. I think you know him as well. But the folks that came out of that little crowd and little scene, it was really nice to be able to kind of find a place. And then you sort of like, if you're a kid my age in that kind of a community, then you look to level up a little. You know, I went to school in Cleveland, to college in Cleveland, and then I sort of, that was cool, leveled up a little bit more, went to Boston and Pittsburgh, and then finally like made the move to New York City. By that point, that was 2005. I was writing songs very regularly and actually moved up here with a bandmate. Okay. So I don't know if I answered the question, but
no, it's fine. I'm just interested because I kind of thought like small town vibe. I'm not getting any of that with like your music so much.
You're right. It's I'll confess
it's like
that
very well rounded.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, and I think for a while it was like, if I seem level headed musically, it's because I have chips on both shoulders, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. And I didn't want, I'm laughing because we're looking at this, you know, my dobro on the table. It was like the last thing I wanted to do was have like a West Virginia reference or a, you know, country reference. And it turns out like, you know, you may be done with the past, but the past ain't done with you, kind of thing. So I do, that stuff is all in there. You know, my pap was a huge fan of Johnny Cash. I mean, like all the basics, all the building blocks. But of course, you know, I admittedly sort of never really felt at home in those areas. It was a good place to grow up, but I was like pulled in other directions, you know, from teenage years on, and I never really had a plan to move to New York City, but it's always, I think, curious minds always kind of lead their owners in directions that they're not always kind of aware or even willing sometimes to go. So.
So talk to me a little bit, but let's go back to the two songs that you played
Sure.
and the period between them
Sure.
in your life.
Okay, here we go. How long is this podcast?
So where were you heading? Because
Right.
when you released Smile.
Yeah.
So just like kind of the lead up, because I know that you had released a couple of singles,
I
right?
had.
And kind of were on your way, right?
There was some momentum that I was building with a press agent and a guy who was interested at a label, and I was getting some good looks, playing all the shows that you want to play in New York.
Sure.
This is around 2018
Okay.
to 2019, and kind of building momentum. I did get a bite on the label and was ostensibly just putting kind of an album package together
Sure.
for a release. That record, that first record, was sort of the culmination of a lot of picking kind of the best songs. I feel like it was the era that I really learned to do it, and producing things myself. Being in the recording studio, paying for the studio time, playing most of the instruments, but I don't play drums. A few things that I called some folks in for, bass. And there's some great players on that record, but I think for me it was kind of it was my opportunity to just really sort of show people like what I've been kind of cooking, and it was working. It was working.
Yeah.
So so the attention that I got and the press that I got and kind of the momentum that followed, I think it was a Smile was again sort of the calling card for that particular album,
Right.
Which I still think is a great song and very
Sure.
it's sort of not an Eli gig till you hear Smile. So
Yeah.
but I do kind of, again, not to we'll get to the other part in just a second, but
Sure.
I was very happy with the situation, right? I was things were really bumping along. I felt very good about the material. I felt good about the direction. I had just gotten engaged and et cetera, et cetera. So
Were you releasing a single at a time? Like, was this like your
Yes.
typical Spotify
that
thing?
was the deal.
The algorithm stuff.
Right. So
Yeah.
so we were four or five singles in. The record's like 11 songs,
Right.
so 12 songs.
Right.
So
So it was the slow
we were
burn.
slow, but
Yeah.
it was
It was working.
it was
Yeah.
working. It was
Yeah.
working, and,
Yeah.
and I think that every that kind of every sequential release, especially I think because the songs. I mean, I pat myself on the back.
Sure.
They're different.
Sure.
They're each to the other is different, but I think the sounds are good on the record. I mean, very happy with kind of and the writing. So it all was making sense until
Dun,
and
dun,
then,
dun.
dun, dun.
Yeah.
And in March of 2020, I was one of the very unfortunate few, and fell severely ill with COVID very quickly. I was never hospitalized. It was never, there were no ventilators, and God bless and rest in peace to all those folks, because we were in my fiance at the time, now wife, and I were in Astoria, Queens, which was like the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a tough situation, I think made tougher by this sort of like mandatory isolation. Really, if I'm being honest, sort of the fact that we had no clue what was going on. We just had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting worse. I was getting worse fast.
Mm.
So to kind of elide some of that and get to the kind of the heart of the story, really truthfully, I spent the next 3.5 years trying to recover. So through all sorts of things, there were drug trials, there were stem cells. It was just a madhouse. And I think the time that I had spent away from playing music, I mean, it was more than just maybe I'll do this again, maybe I'll pick this back up. This was like lost my voice for 2 years, almost gave away all my instruments. Couldn't possibly imagine a world where I could be standing on a stage again, So there was a time where I was like wheelchair bound. I mean, it was severe. It was severe, and I really have to, at this point, thank my wife, who just was just a total superhero about all of it, and in the face of everything that we didn't know, and everything that was sort of like a burden, in ways that I think when you're just 41 years old, which is how old I was, she's a little younger, I don't think you're really prepared to understand. You know, there's a lot of stuff that gets heavy very quickly when things are that serious. So again, knocking on wood, that era passed. I was able to recover to the point where really the first thing that I was interested in doing was picking up the guitar and starting to write songs again. And that was in the shadow of something that I think just complete, you know, there's no comparison. There's just a before and an after, and it's hard to imagine kind of yourself without it in a weird way. Yeah.
Were you able at any point during that time to even consider writing?
So the truth of the matter is that there were just too many other obstacles for me. I think this was a situation where nothing else had my attention, and in order to get out of the jackpot, I had to stay focused where I was, and I couldn't really let my mind stray.
Yeah. Because it's a physical and a mental thing at some point,
and for what it's worth, spiritual as well, and that really, you know, and it pulls you. It very much changes. It turns you into a different person for the duration of that illness. I mean, that being said, of course, like there were parts of me that very much wanted to get back and revisit, and it was a little too painful to listen to some of those songs and read the press and just think like, well, that was then, you know, that was
Sure.
then. Yeah.
Sure.
So, but I say again, the happy sort of turn the corner moment came right around month 28, which would have been around May of 2022, 2022, May or June. And I just started to have a slightly better day and a slightly better day after that. And you know, that's when you've been sitting on a couch for 2.5 years, it's tough, you know. It's a haul.
Yeah,
as they
if
say.
you could
So,
put together a couple of days in a row.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that, you know, it's cumulative, but you also, there's no rushing, and you just have to understand that you're just not in charge, you know. So I think again, it's to give a little you know, points of grace, moments of grace. Those are the kinds of things I think that really changed my way of looking at what I want to accomplish, what I want to give musically, and what I have to say musically, you know.
And then once you're starting to feel a little bit better,
Yeah.
at what point do you say, okay, I want to go back?
You know, to me, I think it was finally remember that that she and I were in this pit a lot longer than most people. So masking until 2023. I mean, it was a big, it was a challenge. I think for me, I could finally sort of take a breath and say, I'm ready. When I got to play a few songs at my own wedding. So yeah, we had a band, and
Which was one?
that was June 3rd of 2023.
Wow.
And I think that just sort of, I could see I could see the path, you know.
You could exhale.
I could exhale.
Yeah.
She could exhale. That was maybe more important to me, you know, that it was okay for her.
Yeah.
And I do, you know, I see kind of the changes that sort of overcame both of us, right? Like it just was, you know, to find a way to do it and to be together. Sure. and still understand that you know, not everything. She and I often sort of talk about that scene in The Lord of the Rings where at the end, you know, where Samwise kind of gives the knowing look. Everybody else is jumping on the bed, and he just comes in, and Frodo's like, yeah. You've seen it. You saw it. You saw it go down. You totally know, you know. And it is a little bit. We chuckle about it. But I say this from a place of joy, because we've had our happy story. You know, that was all. Once I could pick up those kinds of pieces, I was ready to think about being an artist again. You know.
Did you listen to music during that time?
Oh, oof. If I say I try not to, what I mean is, of course, there were songs that were just
Too much, huh?
they were too much,
Yeah.
or there were things that were a little too close and a little too sad for me, and
triggering. Yeah.
triggering.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I say this, and this is, you know, I would sort of proffer this as a, like, for anybody that's in a totally screwed up situation that you just don't think you're going to get out of. It's okay to kind of set yourself down for a minute.
Sure.
You're going to be there. You're going to pick it back up later.
Yeah. Give yourself some grace.
Give yourself some grace. That really is what it was about. And I think rather than sort of, you know, flagellate myself continuously about the music thing, I just had to understand that I was gonna, you know, I was gonna have to take a journey. I was gonna have to take a journey,
Right.
which I did. So that was a big, that to me was kind of like the admixture of kind of relearning.
So now that you've gone through your Gollum stage and the ring is destroyed, like
Yeah.
what happens now? Like where, like I know that you have some gigs and
Yeah.
and hopefully you and I can get you some more. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
tell me like where. I mean, you just kind of you're here.
I'm here.
So that's
yeah.
that's all that matters.
It really, truly.
You know. So, but what do you see like in this? You know,
So-
I don't
so-
want to do another book reference. I was going to say,
No.
you know, the next chapter, and
It's
I was
okay,
like,
we can
don't
get-
say it, John.
It's okay.
But I said it anyway. But like, where do you, where do you want to put yourself now?
So the good news is I feel, I mean, I'm writing constantly. I'm starting to gig out. My wife and I moved to Ossining.
Okay.
I'm playing in Westchester. I'm playing a couple gigs in the city. I have a gig on May 12th at Fifth Hammer Brewery. There's another gig back in Westchester at the Westchester Songwriters Circle.
Okay.
And
What's
that's
your Instagram handle?
It's at Musser Official. It's
Okay.
at Musser Official. So all this,
There you
all
go.
this stuff
So
is going to
it'll
end
all
up
be
there.
on
So,
there.
yeah, right,
Okay.
right. And you know, and the royal we. I have a catalog that I feel, you know, not only is kind of just what I want to say, but also I do think there's a little bit more to the story now, whether or not that's, you know, comes across like in every lyric. It's certainly, I think it's something I tried to deliver when I'm playing live
Sure.
or in the recording. Headed back to the studio to record some of those songs that I did post COVID. And of course, you know, looking again, like maybe to a label to put some of this out. I recently started a band with another friend up in Westchester.
Awesome.
You know, that's going to be its own separate.
What's his name?
With Pete Donnelly.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was in the bass player for NRBQ for a while, and he has a band called the Figs, and he's just a great guy, just an amazing musician, and somebody I probably wouldn't have met if we'd stayed in New York, to be honest, in the city.
Well,
So-
I'll say this because I am a firm believer that people who say live in the moment and live each day like it's your last, do not do that. I am one of them.
It's true.
I am one of them.
Well, I
Like-
was one of them.
Like count your
Yeah.
blessings and all
Yeah.
that. So I think that even if you play a gig and share your story and there's one person in there, it's a gift.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And my wife routinely will wake up and look over at me at first thing in the morning and say, "What are you so damn happy about? Why are you?
Yeah.
You got it." And it is true. You know, it's something. If you can't escape those circumstances, then you sort of owe it to yourself if you make it out of there. To really, I hate to say, you almost can't see it any other way. You almost can't go back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's a good place to be, having left
Right.
the thing.
Never return.
Never return.
Never return.
But also don't take it for granted. And the people, you know, I have to say this. This is when we moved out of Astoria. You know, our was intentionally to sort of change our lives and start a new chapter. And I could not be happier with the folks that I've been meeting and the people and the places I've been playing and the songs I've been writing. It's just, you know, it would be inconceivable if you told, you know, New York City Eli of 6 or 7 years ago that like all this was going to change for the better. Yeah. After the worst thing you could possibly go through.
It's like, yeah. Let me go back in time and tell your past.
Fast forward.
You don't want to go to this part, but fast forward.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be really cool. Just give it 4.5 years. Yeah. But you know, that's the funny thing about being alive is that a lot of it's just not in your control, which is, you know, funny enough, I think part of the music making as well. You know, you're just becoming a conduit for something, and I think if you're like a little bit more sensitive than most people, you'll pull some interesting things into your orbit and really create something I think that people respond to.
Yeah.
So
I'm happy you're here.
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy you're here.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
I appreciate it. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Okay.